What if I told you that 3 simple words, spoken by Jesus more than 2,000 years ago, can still awaken something sleeping inside you today? That question echoes like an ancient whisper crossing time, touching the deepest part of your being, the part that stress, fear, and exhaustion keep trying to silence. There is something inside you that knows this sentence is not just a provocation, it's a calling to remember what was never lost, only forgotten. We live in a world that shouts, rushes, demands, and pushes, a world where people carry a light in their eyes that slowly gets dimmed by anxiety, piling responsibilities, and the constant feeling of being late for their own life. In this turbulent scenario, many start to believe that their inner light has gone out forever, but that's not true. The light never disappears. It only hides behind layers of pain, doubt, and emotional overload, and Jesus knew that. He knew that true transformation doesn't come from complexity, but from simplicity filled with truth. That's why he chose short words, few syllables carrying entire universes. Jesus understood that words are energy, vibration, pure intention shaping reality, and when spoken with awareness, a word becomes a doorway that connects human to divine, chaos to silence, darkness to inner clarity. Every phrase he spoke was meant to cross not just the ears, but the heart, and it's that same movement you're about to experience now. What you're going to hear here is not religion, it's awareness. It's an inner dive, an invitation to notice what has always been there, pulsing at the center of your chest. You're about to walk a path that doesn't open in front of your eyes, but inside your soul. A path where every step is a return to what is essential. And along this journey, 3 words will be revealed. 3 words Jesus used not as magic formulas, but as keys. Keys that open 3 different doors of awakening: the door of inner peace, the door of spiritual clarity, and the door of courageous purpose. Each one carries a kind of light. Each one illuminates a different part of the way. And together, they form a map to rediscover who you really are. But before they are revealed, you need to know something vital. This journey is not about learning something new. It's about remembering what already exists, silent and alive, inside you. As Jesus said, with a serenity that crosses centuries, the kingdom of God is within you. There was a man named Elias, not the prophet, not a biblical character, just an ordinary man. Quiet. One of those people you see on the street with a distant look, as if carrying a weight no one else can see. He always walked with his shoulders slightly hunched, as if trying to shield his heart from life's invisible impact. He was the kind of person everyone assumed was strong precisely because he never said anything. But inside, he was at his limit, at the edge of pain, the edge of doubt, the edge of himself. On a particularly difficult night, Elias left home with no destination. The city seemed asleep, but inside him everything was noise. His mind shouted, his chest tightened, his breathing felt too short for so much anguish. He walked and walked until he reached a small abandoned garden, lit only by an old street lamp that flickered now and then, like a hesitant heart trying to keep beating. There, sitting on a worn wooden bench, was an older man with calm eyes and a peaceful presence. He didn't look like a spiritual teacher. He looked like someone who knew how to listen. When Elias drew closer, the man simply said, "You arrived at the right time." The phrase, so simple, pierced Elias like a silent flash of lightning. He sat down almost without realizing it, as if that bench had been waiting for him for a very long time. A long silence stretched between them, but it was a different kind of silence, a silence that welcomed, that made space, that invited the soul to breathe. After a few minutes, the man asked, "Do you know why Jesus chose such short words?" Elias shook his head, not trusting his own voice. Because truth doesn't need decoration, it only needs to be remembered. And he knew that the right word, spoken at the right moment, touches the right place inside us. Elias felt a slight tremor. It was the first time in months that someone said something that seemed to speak directly to what he felt. That deep emptiness, that lack of clarity, that almost childlike longing to find a light in the middle of the dark. The man went on. "Your light has not been extinguished, Elias. It has only been buried under the weight of what you're living through. But there is a way back, a path that begins with 3 words. The words hadn't been spoken yet, but just knowing that such a path existed lit something inside him. The mentor, his name was Simon, as he would later say, explained that Jesus didn't speak just to teach. He spoke to awaken. His words weren't just sounds. They were vibrations, invitations. Invisible hands wiping dust off inner windows that had been closed for far too long. Simon then told a simple story, profoundly symbolic. He said, when Jesus said, "I am the light of the world," he wasn't asking to be worshipped. He was saying, "I am light, and so are you. The difference is, I know it. You've forgotten." Every word he spoke was a reminder, a mirror held up to the human soul. Elias felt silent, tears fall down his face before he could hold them back. They weren't tears of sadness, but of recognition, as if those words were pulling away an old veil, revealing a truth he had always known but never dared to look at directly. Simon continued, "The human journey is a path full of doors. Some are wide and easy, others narrow and demanding. But all of them lead to the same question: who are you really when pain comes to visit?" Jesus showed that despite the storms, there is a flame that refuses to go out, even when the wind blows hard. Life may try to extinguish it, but it remains, always. With every sentence, Elias pictured that flame inside himself, small, maybe, weak, maybe, but alive. Simon then spoke about the layers of Jesus' wisdom, literal, spiritual, and symbolic. He said many get lost at the surface of the words and forget that Jesus spoke to souls, not just to the intellect. Those who listen with the ears understand a sentence. Those who listen with the heart understand a universe. Elias's story was slowly turning into reflection. His crisis now felt like part of a calling, his doubt, part of an awakening, and his inner silence, once frightening, now began to feel like fertile ground, like soil after a long rain. He realized that all of it, every challenge, every loss, every hard night, had been pointing him toward a reunion with himself. That's when Simon said something that would change the course of that night. The first word is the foundation of all the others. It's the root. Without it, no light can stand. Jesus used it whenever he needed to break through fear, dissolve doubt, and reconnect hearts. Elias leaned forward, feeling he was about to discover something essential. But Simon only smiled and said, "Not yet. First, you need to learn how to really listen, to feel before you know, to sense before you understand." And it was in that moment, on that simple bench, in that forgotten garden, that Elias realized the revelation wouldn't come from outside, it would come from within. The first word would be more than a concept. It would be an encounter, an awakening, a return to the light he thought he had lost. And this was only the beginning. Simon took a deep breath before continuing, like someone who knows they're about to touch sacred ground. Elias watched his every move, feeling something invisible drawing closer, something he couldn't see with his eyes, only recognize with his soul. The mentor then placed his hand over his own chest and said, with gentle firmness, "The first word is peace." The word seemed to land in the air like a flake of light, simple, short, familiar, but at the same time, so deep it created an inner silence Elias hadn't felt in years. Simon went on, "Jesus repeated this word whenever the human heart got lost. He knew that no transformation is possible if the soul is restless. Before clarity, before purpose, before courage, there must be peace. Peace is the ground, the invisible foundation, the place where the inner light starts to breathe." Elias closed his eyes for a moment, letting the word reverberate inside him. It felt as if he were reconnecting with something that had always been part of his nature, but had hidden beneath the rubble of his worries. Simon noticed the subtle shift and said, "When Jesus was in the desert, facing not only hunger but his own inner shadows, he called upon peace. Not a naive peace, but the peace that rises from the center, The peace that doesn't depend on circumstances, but on awareness. The peace of someone who knows who they are. The mentor then recalled the episode of the storm at sea. The boat rocked, the wind roared, the disciples screamed, and Jesus slept. He slept because he had peace, Simon said, and when he rose to calm the sea, he first calmed his own heart, because every outer storm begins to dissolve when the inner storm finds rest. Elias absorbed every word like cool water poured over a desert. His mind began to slow down. His breathing, once short and heavy, grew deeper. The word peace created space, opened cracks, let light in. Simon then explained, the peace Jesus taught was not the absence of conflict, it was presence of spirit. It was the recognition that there is within you an unshakable center untouched by circumstances. Peace is remembering that center. Then, as if opening the curtains on a new understanding, Simon began to teach how this word can be applied in the hardest moments of life. When anxiety comes, he said, place your hand over your heart and repeat, peace. Not as a request, but as a return to the place where nothing threatens you. When the night feels too long and your thoughts won't stop racing, repeat, peace. When you're facing a decision that seems impossible, breathe and say, peace. And when your mind is in chaos, tired of carrying all the weight, simply say, peace. Every repetition is like turning on a light inside you. To illustrate, Simon shared a short parable. A traveler walked along a dry, dusty road. The sun burned overhead, and his thirst felt unbearable. At one point, he found a spring hidden among the rocks. He drank, refreshed himself, rested, and then, without noticing, left his canteen full of water behind. Further ahead, he felt thirsty again. Despair came over him. But when he looked back, he remembered the spring was still there, untouched, waiting. Peace is that spring. You may forget it, but it never stops existing within you. Elias smiled faintly, like someone who understands without needing many explanations. He realized that throughout his whole life, he had been searching for peace in the wrong places, in outside answers, in people, in achievements, in escape. And now he understood peace had always been inside, silent but alive. It just needed to be touched. Simon then dove into the symbolic meaning of the word. Peace, he said, is the first ray of inner light. It's the clarity that makes it possible to see what was previously shadow. Without peace, the soul is foggy, like a dirty window that blocks the light. With peace, everything else begins to rearrange itself. He spoke about the spiritual practice Jesus inspired. Sit in silence, breathe deeply, bring the word peace inside you, not through your mouth, but through your awareness. Feel it flowing down through your shoulders, dissolving tension. Feel it resting in your chest, softening old hurts. Repeat it mentally, with intention. Peace. With each repetition, imagine a soft flame lighting up behind your ribs, slowly illuminating everything that once seemed dark. Listening to this, Elias felt tears again, not of sadness, but of recognition, as if that flame had already been there, weak, shy, but completely ready to grow if only it were welcomed. Simon noticed and said, peace is not something you achieve, it's something you allow. Jesus said, my peace I give to you. He didn't say, I bring it from somewhere else. He said, I give. Because peace was already part of human identity. He was just helping us remember. In that moment, a light breeze moved through the garden, rustling the leaves with a sound like a whisper. Elias closed his eyes and, in his own silence, spoke the word for the first time. Peace. And in that instant, something inside him shifted. Small, but real. A peace that didn't come from outside, but rose from within, like water emerging from a long-forgotten spring. Simon then continued, preparing Elias's heart and yours as you listen for the next step. The first word awakens peace, but peace, by itself, is not the destination. It's the starting point, the foundation, the ground on which life begins to rebuild itself. Now a second word will come, a word that changes how you see yourself, how you move, how you choose to live. If the first word lights peace, the next one lights movement, and he opened a new loop. The second word is like a lighthouse that shines in the night of your own heart, guiding you out of numbness and into purpose. Without it, peace becomes static. With it, your inner light begins to expand. Simon leaned back on the bench, like someone who knows the next step requires preparation. Peace is the initial flame, he said, but the next words is the breath that makes that flame grow. Simon remained silent for a few moments, not out of hesitation, but because he knew certain teachings only land when the inner ground is ready. Elias felt it. He was breathing more deeply, with a newly discovered calm. Peace, so simple, so forgotten, now felt like a living presence in his chest. But there was something more. An intuition, a sense that this journey wouldn't end in serenity. It had to continue. It had to move. Then Simon slowly lifted his gaze to the sky, as if observing something only he could see, and said, "The second word is rise." The word fell between them like a silent lightning bolt. It wasn't a command. It wasn't an order. It was a calling. Elias sensed it immediately. Rise. A word Jesus used again and again in moments when he found someone paralyzed by pain, doubt, illness, or fear. A word that didn't speak only to the body, but to the soul. Simon explained. Jesus said rise when he wanted to remind someone of their own strength. He said it to the paralyzed man, to the one lying on the side of the road, to the girl everyone believed was gone. But he didn't stand up on their behalf. He only awakened something inside them, something that already existed. The strength didn't come from outside. It came from within. Always. A chill ran down Elias's spine. It was impossible to hear that word and not see himself reflected in it. How many times had he remained fallen on the inside, even while moving on the outside? How many times had his body kept functioning while his soul stayed kneeling on the floor of its own fear? Seeing the silent transformation happening within him, Simon continued, "Peace awakens the light, but it's rise that puts that light in motion. Without movement, the light stays contained. Without action, the soul stays locked in." He then explored the philosophical side of the word. To rise is more than getting your body off the ground. It's reclaiming your spiritual dignity. It's remembering your purpose. It's opening your eyes to a new horizon. When Jesus said rise, he was really saying how you were not born to crawl through the shadows life throws at you. You were born to walk with firmness, identity, and awareness. Simon described moments in which this word appears with strong symbolism. He spoke of the bent-over woman who, upon hearing Jesus say, "Rise," straightened not only her back, but her spirit. He spoke of the man at the pool of Bethesda, who waited years for someone to put him in the water, until Jesus looked into his eyes and said, "Rise, take up your mat and walk." "Notice," Simon said, Jesus didn't carry him. He simply gave him back the memory of what he could always do. Elias listened with his heart pounding harder. For perhaps the first time, he understood that he had spent years waiting for something external to rescue him, a life change, an opportunity, a sign. And now he saw, the change begins when you decide to rise, not when the world shifts, but when you shift your posture toward it. Simon then deepened the inner meaning of the word. Rise is the word of purpose, the word of conscious movement, the word that dissolves stagnation, fear, emotional paralysis. When you say rise to yourself, you're saying, "I won't stay where pain has left me, I walk." He described how this word works inside the soul. Imagine your inner light as a newly lit flame. It illuminates, but it's still small. To grow, it needs movement, air, expansion. The word rise is that breath. It's the air that makes the flame alive. Without it, peace becomes comfort. With it, peace becomes strength. Then Simon shared a symbolic story. There was a bird that, from a very young age, lived inside a box with a heavy lid. It learned to sing without flying. It learned to survive without seeing the sky. One day, during a storm, Lightning struck near the box and knocked the lid open just an inch. Light slipped through the gap. The bird saw the brightness and felt a calling. The lid hadn't fallen completely, but it was no longer locked. It just needed one movement. It just needed to rise. The bird hesitated, but instinctively heard a voice saying, "Now, rise." And when it pushed that lid up with the top of its head, it discovered the sky that had always existed above it. It flew, not because it learned in that moment, but because it had always been capable. Elias realized that this was the point. Life had left gaps, small openings, little signs, but he had never had the courage to push the lid. He had always waited for someone else to remove it all for him. Now he understood. The second word demands decision, it demands movement, it demands spiritual responsibility. Seeing the new strength shining in his eyes, Simon said, "The second word is the bridge between peace and fulfillment. Peace calms, rise pushes forward. When you unite peace with rise, you stop being a spectator of life and become a conscious walker of your own path." He then taught a simple practice. When you wake up, before getting up physically, close your eyes and repeat the two words, peace, rise. Feel the serenity first, then feel the impulse. Life begins inside. Every outer movement is born from an inner movement. And as if preparing the ground for something even deeper, Simon finished by explaining that there is a third word, the most delicate, the most hidden, the most luminous of all. The third word, he said, is the spiritual center. It's the word Jesus used when he wanted to reveal the essential truth of being. It doesn't just light the light, it reveals who you are within that light. With that promise hanging between them, Elias felt a sweet, bright mystery growing inside him. A mystery like he was about to hear something that would change his relationship with existence itself. The third word, Simon said, doesn't just awaken movement, it awakens essence. Simon stayed quiet for a few seconds, giving the soul room to breathe before the next step. Elias still felt the vibration of the second word echoing inside him, rise, like a gentle drum calling him back to life. But there was something deeper still, something that didn't yet have a name, something that felt like it had been waiting for him behind an invisible veil. The mentor sensed this expectation and smiled, soft and almost fatherly. Then, in an even gentler tone, Simon said, "Many people spend their entire lives searching for answers outside. They look in books and in teachers, in churches, in relationships, in achievements, in anything that shines on the outside. But Jesus said the path is the other way around. He said, the kingdom of God is within you. Always. Since before any search began." Elias felt his body relax, as if those words reached straight into a quiet, forgotten understanding. Simon continued, "The third word points to that place. It doesn't speak about what you must do, like the second word. It speaks about who you are, in your essence, in what exists before pain, before your story, before your falls and victories. The third word is like a key that opens the core, the sacred center, the point where light doesn't just exist, it is." A light breeze carried the scent of damp earth, as if nature itself were listening. Simon then said, "If the first word brought peace and the second brought movement, the third you brings revelation. Not an outer revelation, as if you were about to discover a secret hidden out in the world, but an inner revelation, like someone turning on a flashlight in a dark room and realizing that what they were searching for has been there all along." He paused, not to create artificial suspense, but because the pause was part of the teaching. Truth needs silence to be prepared. The third word, Simon went on, is the highest state of awareness Jesus taught. It is simple, direct, humble, but at the same time so deep it reaches across centuries. Jesus used it when he wanted to dissolve illusions, when he wanted to remind humanity of its true spiritual origin. Elias felt his heart beat faster, not from anxiety, but from a kind of anticipatory recognition, like his soul already knew the word long before his mind would hear it. Simon looked at him with tenderness and said, "Get ready. The third word doesn't just illuminate, it reveals you." And he added, "When it comes, don't hear it only with your ears. Hear it with your being. The atmosphere around them felt denser, more sacred, more alive. The world seemed to hold its breath. The next word, Simon said, is the heart of your inner light. It is the final revelation. Simon leaned in slightly, as if he were about to hand over something that wasn't just knowledge, but transmission. His eyes, once simply calm, now held a different kind of brightness, the brightness of someone about to reveal the core of truth. Elias felt his own heart race, not with fear, but with a strange familiarity, as if he were about to meet something that had always belonged to him. Then the mentor said, in a gentle but profound voice, "The third word is I am." The word rose in the air like a silent sunrise, soft at first, then undeniable. Elias felt as if an invisible veil had been lifted from within him. I am, two words that depend on nothing external, that ask no permission, that don't define themselves by the world, that do not bow to fear. They simply are. I am, Simon explained. When Jesus said I am, he wasn't speaking from ego or human identity. He was speaking from the divine spark within every being. He said, I am, to awaken the memory that we are more than our pain, more than our circumstances, more than our apparent limits. I am is the word of the core. It is the word of essence, the word of the light that doesn't need explanation, it simply exists. Elias realized that, unlike the other two words, this one didn't invite him to do anything, only to be. It felt as though it had been waiting for him all along, hidden somewhere deep in his awareness, waiting for the right moment to bloom. Simon went on, Peace lights the light. Rise puts that light into motion. But I am is the moment when you understand that you are the light itself. The mentor then shared how Jesus used this word at moments of greatest revelation. When he said, I am the light of the world, he was not claiming something exclusive for himself. He was saying, I am, and so are you. When he said, I am the door, he was showing that awareness is the portal to everything. When he said, I am the way, he was showing that the true path is not outside, it's inside, always inside. A gentle warmth rose in Elias's chest, as if his very soul were waking up. Seeing this, Simon went even deeper. I am is the word that undoes the masks, the word that melts self-criticism, the past, and the fear of the future. When you repeat I am, you are affirming your spiritual identity. You're saying, I exist beyond everything that tried to break me. I exist beyond pain. I exist beyond the stories that were told about me. I am. The mentor then guided him through a short practice, slowly, like someone leading another across a threshold. Close your eyes, Elias. Take a deep breath. Feel the peace. Feel the movement of rise. Now place your hand over your heart and say silently, I am. Don't try to finish the sentence. Don't try to understand. Just say it. I am. Elias did exactly that. And in that instant, something inside him opened like a horizon. It was as if he finally recognized himself, not as the tired man, not as the lost man, not as the broken man, but as a being of light who, for some reason, had forgotten his own origin. Simon smiled. The third word completes the cycle, he said. It unites peace, movement, and essence. It places you at the center of your own existence. When you say I am, you come home. The mentor then offered a symbolic image. Imagine your inner light as a sun. Peace is the dawn, gentle, delicate, healing the night. Rise is the sun climbing the sky. But I am, is the full midday, when nothing can hide the brightness. It's the moment when the light doesn't just illuminate the world, it illuminates itself. Simon finished with a deep explanation. When you internalize the word I am, you're not creating a new identity. You're returning to your original one, the identity that existed before pain, expectations, labels, and falls. I am is the point where the human touches the divine. And as a silent blessing, he concluded, use this word in moments of sadness, on days when the world feels dark, in hours of loneliness. Say I am. And notice, you never stopped being light. You just forgot I am is what reminds you. The soft light of the street lamp wrapped around them, almost golden, as if confirming everything that had just been said. Elias took a deep breath. For the first time in a long time, he felt whole. Simon watched him in silence, like someone witnessing the birth of something sacred. The man who had arrived broken, hunched, hiding inside his own pain, now breathed differently. His eyes held a new depth. His posture carried new meaning, not because life outside had changed, but because something within him had been rekindled. The inner light, the one that seemed gone, now flickered alive, illuminating spaces that had once been dark. Then Simon said, with a serenity that seemed to embrace the air around them, "Remember the first question. What if I told you that 3 simple words, spoken by Jesus, can awaken something sleeping inside you?" Now you know it wasn't just a provocation, it was a path. Elias understood immediately. The journey that had begun with an almost abstract question had become an inner reality. He felt peace resting on his chest like a soft mantle. He felt rise vibrating as a quiet impulse to move forward. And he felt, "I am shining like an inner sun," revealing his true essence. Simon continued, "These 3 words complete one another because Jesus never taught in fragments. He offered whole paths, revelations that began in serenity, moved through conscious action, and culminated in spiritual identity. Peace is what calms, rise is what moves, I am is what reveals. When you unite these 3 forces, you stop being led by the world and start leading your own life." A gentle wind blew, carrying the scent of leaves swaying in the nearby trees. The sound seemed to accompany each word from the mentor. He went on, "Now that you've received the 3 keys, it's up to you to keep them alive. Not as concepts, not as pretty ideas, but as daily practice. Your inner light needs nourishment. It needs to be remembered, and each of these words is a call to that." Simon then offered a simple ritual, almost like a gift. When you wake up, before checking your phone, before thinking about your day, before getting out of bed, place your hand over your heart and say, "Peace." Breathe, then say, "Rise." Feel the impulse, and finish with, "I am." Acknowledge your origin. He smiled. If you do this every day, you'll see that life doesn't transform from the outside in. It transforms from the inside out. Elias received every phrase with reverence. He no longer felt like a man adrift. He felt like someone who had found his center again. And that center had 3 words, 3 lights, 3 paths. Simon then stood up, not as a farewell but as a continuation of the journey. He looked at Elias with quiet gratitude and said, "The light you were looking for never left. It was only waiting to be remembered. And now, looking at you, who have walked through this story, I leave you with a question that closes this cycle and opens another. Which of these 3 words touched your heart the most today? Breathe, feel, receive. And remember, your inner light always responds when you call it. May you walk in peace, may you rise, may you recognize who you truly are, and may your I am illuminate everything around you.